Welcome to the show and greetings from Monrovia, the capital city of Liberia. But this is not the location of today's show. Allow me to introduce Elijah Mwangi in Nairobi, who is sitting in for me as I'm away on a different assignment. Hello, Elijah. The seat is all yours.
Thank you so much, Alex. I'll try as much as I can to fit in your big shoes. And by the way, you're looking very good in that West African outfit. How is Monrovia?
Monrovia is fine, Elijah. I've even had time to traverse various parts of the country, including the interior. And look, Liberia is really green. It rains almost throughout the year. From October onwards for about 6 months, the dry season, what they call the dry season, is setting in. But there will be light rains anyway.
Well, Alex, just to ask, are the Liberians feeling the effect of climate change, whose horror is getting closer and closer to many parts of the world?
Of course, despite the country being green throughout the year, weather patterns are changing, temperatures are rising, and it is said, despite the origin of the cause, effects of climate change end up spreading across the globe.
The situation is not different in Kenya. The short rains that were supposed to come in October are coming late in November. Of course, these will affect the farming activities across the country. And the famine in Kenya is being attributed to climate change as well.
So what do you have in the program for us, Elijah?
Well, Alex, it's like we have already introduced the show because today we are talking about food security and climate change. Remember, this coincides with the just concluded United Nations Climate Change Conference held in Marrakesh, Morocco.
Great. Take it away as I continue with my assignment here in Monrovia.
Thank you so much, Alex. Now, in this show,
agriculture is the most affected area by climate change.
Kuna mvua uwaga tunatarajia early October. Na kama this time round haikunyesha.
Find out, is Kenya prepared to handle the effects of climate change in regards to agriculture and food security?
Adoption of the research findings will be faster.
When we plant trees, we can counter the erratic effects of weather.
And after the climate change conference in Paris in the year 2015, what has changed? We have expert view on that.
And one of the key issues in the area of food security have been inefficiencies in the entire agro value chain.
But first, let's have the fact sheet. Agricultural systems in East Africa are mainly rain-fed and highly vulnerable to climate change and variability. According to the International Center for Tropical Agriculture, floods, heat, and cold stress have increased with negative impact on agriculture and food security. And as the impact on climate change intensify, poor smallholder farmers will be among the hardest hit. Statistics indicate that 75% of the world's poor and food insecure people rely on agriculture and natural resources for their livelihoods. The Food and Agriculture Organization estimates the world food production must rise 60% to keep pace with demographic change. But climate change puts this at risk. Meanwhile, rising temperatures are predicted to reduce catches on the world's main fish species by 40%. Climate change can also transfer risks of foodborne diseases from one region to another, threatening public health in new ways. In Kenya, the government has intensified efforts at both national and county level to increase the forest cover as part of efforts to mitigate against climate change.
We must raise our forest cover by 10%. At the moment, we are at 7.2%.
All right, the horror of climate change is getting closer and closer. Rain seasons are changing and temperatures are soaring, with one of the most affected areas being agriculture, hence a big threat to the entire humanity. So what next?
Picture this. Rice fields are drying in Mwea irrigation scheme
in Kirinyaga County, the scheme that produces the bulk of rice consumed in Kenya. Why? Because of inadequate water from River Tiba that supplies water to the scheme. To make matters worse, rainfall that could remedy the situation failed. All these amid changing weather patterns that farmers are finding hard to cope with.
Hii ni kwa boat. Hii ilikosa maji wakati wa flowering.
To the rice farmers, the harsh reality of climate change has now come closer.
Kuna mvua uwaga tunatarajia early October, na kama this time round haikunyesha. Kwa hivyo hiyo climate change imetuaffect pia.
Elsewhere, in Lari, Kiambu County, farmers are not taking anything to chance. They have gone big on use of biogas in order to reduce cutting of trees and in turn save forests. They have been taught that rainfall, to use a layman's language, comes from forests.
As part of climate change mitigation and adaptation, some of the farming practices our farmers are involved in, and especially those farmers who are now using biogas. Why I say they have double benefits, it's because the bioslurry is also being used as an organic fertilizer. So they're involved in organic farming.
Talk of climate-smart agriculture and research is a key component of any country's effort to assist farmers to adapt to the climate change. We sought to find out what the Kenya Agriculture and Livestock Research Organization is doing towards aligning agriculture to climate change.
For example, in tea, there's a lot of effect of hailstones destroying the tea. There's effects of frost. There are effects of new pests and diseases. There's a lot of erosion because the land is open where the tea is grown. So we have had to innovate technologies, for example, including agroforestry trees within the tea growing areas to mitigate the effects of hail damage and to mitigate the effects of frost damage, because when you plant trees within the tea growing areas, you create a microclimate.
One of the simple farming practices the organization is advocating for is what is known as conservation agriculture.
The other areas which we are focusing on is on those crops, traditional high-value crops, which are resilient or resistant to drought.
The Kenya Agricultural and Livestock Research Organization says it is also investing in research towards climate-smart livestock production.
We have also developed a hybrid of the Borana, which is very common in the arid and semi-arid areas, and we have crossed it with an Asha. So you got an animal which is high-yielding, dual purpose, and which fits the environment which they are in the semi-arid areas.
And the role of technology cannot be ignored.
Research is a national function. Extension or dissemination is a devolved function. Our mandate is to develop technologies, knowledge, and information and disseminate to the farmers. So in so doing, we must work very closely with the counties, because the counties cannot disseminate information they don't know, so that they know what technologies have come up, and then it is packaged in a way that the farmers can be able to benefit from.
The bottom line is take it to the farmers. Anything you do, it doesn't make any sense if you don't take it to the farmer. And so the challenge we are faced with and what we need to overcome is how to transfer that technology from the research station to the farmer. And I think we have made strides. A lot needs to be done. But then our research must be demand-driven. We should never do research for academic purposes. We should do research which is answering to the challenges faced in the society.
Meanwhile, the just concluded climate conference in Morocco underscored the need to transform agriculture and make it more resilient to climate change. Several sessions on this subject discussed the need to fast-track small-scale farmers' adaptation to climate change and improving food security.
With climate change, what we see is that we have increased cycles of flooding. then we also have increased cycles of drought. When we plant trees, we can counter the erratic effects of weather. So in other words, we can count on having more predictable rainfall and also controlling the weather patterns. When we rehabilitate the riparian areas, we also control flooding in the rivers. But also when we plant species, such as the various species of bamboo, we also find that the water becomes cleaner and more portable.
Time now to talk to our expert, as we had promised, who is none other than Dr. Richard Munang, the Africa Regional Climate Change Program Coordinator at UNEP. Dr. Richard Munang, in your keynote address during the Africa Food Security Conference that was held sometimes in October this year, you painted a picture of Africa that is in a sorry state, and Africa is struggling to feed herself in the face of climate change. Who, or rather, what will save Africa from this food security crisis?
There are so many things that have been done in the continent today, but done in silos. That ensures that the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Industrialization, the Ministry of Trade can sit on the same table and discuss how ecosystems, which is an environmental solutions, could be integrated in the agricultural policy and agricultural action. And the Ministry of Finance can be able to allocate budgets that could implement this. To ensure that the Ministry of Energy can be able to discuss energy solutions, sitting with the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Environment on how renewable energy could be decentralized into rural areas to create agro-rural industrial zones that are powered by renewable energy. So within a continuum from on-farm productions using ecosystem-based adaptation, which are not absent in the continent today, but expanding the agricultural value chain by ensuring that the processing of the agro products are done using renewable energy so that there are no emissions emitted into the atmosphere, and also linking this to markets through ensuring resilient transport is actually what the framework sets out to do, and it's already galvanizing impacts in countries as we speak today.
Agricultural production and food security in many African countries has been severely compromised by climate change. Kenya has not been spared. A crisis is looming in Kilifi, Taita Taveta and Kwale due to poor long rains and a prolonged lean season. With climate change, large parts of such regions will become drier, increasing the number of people at risk of hunger and starvation.
It is an unfortunate situation where over time we are faced with a drought. And that this drought is affecting the 23 ASAL areas of Kenya, the 23 ASAL counties. What is happening now is we have a few counties, maybe 5 of them, which is now tending towards emergency level. Emergency is where the seriousness is really at the peak. And Kilifi is part of it, Lamu is part of that.
To address the challenge of climate change, governments of more than 190 nations gathered in Paris during the COP21 to discuss a possible new global agreement on climate change. 1 year down the line, has Africa lived to its expectations in the COP21 in Paris?
Africa have actually lived up to that expectation, whether it was the submission of their plans, known as the intended national determined contributions in 2015, up to ratification now. Africa have actually been leading the pathway.
A year after the Paris climate deal, unfortunately, the most vulnerable are still not getting the financial support they need. This is according to a New Oxfam report released during the 22nd session of Conference of Parties in Morocco.
Africa alone cannot carry the burden of adapting to climate change. There must be global climate justice for Africa. We would like to call on the global finance facilities, the Green Climate Fund, and the Global Environment Facility to pay for the insurance premiums for African countries.
So what does Africa stand to gain from the just concluded 22nd session Conference of Parties?
It provides an opportunity for the African continent today, because even though they're the most vulnerable, they also could benefit as a result of the changing climate by taking actions that are unleashing the hidden potential that have been in the continent for quite a very long time. And for example, as we're speaking today, Africa have almost 80% of smallholder farmers utilizing ecosystem-based adaptation approaches. That is, they're working with nature, they're using conservation techniques and utilizing agroforestry techniques, which are not only helping to store carbon on the ground, but at the same time are working with nature and not against nature, and so not destroying the environment. Africa, as we speak today, have renewable energy in abundance. it's only utilizing about 10 to 15% of the hydro potential, which is what? About 1,800 terawatts per year. The renewable energy potential, the sun, 0.5% of the sun that actually shines in northern part of Africa could light the entire Europe. It has wind. So all these potential that have been existing in the continent could now be tapped through utilizing the Paris Agreement, which clearly actually have presented the opportunity to countries, and they have submitted these in their national determined contributions plans.
The hope is that COP22 will spark African countries to ignite the political will, creativity, and worldwide economic support for adaptation measures, but this will only happen with an implementation of a practical climate action.
It's been jokingly said so many times that Africa could have become a cemetery for policies because there are so many policies and decisions that have been taken. But the Sustainable Development Goals, starting the 1st of January 2016, the architecture of global development changed because that was the start of the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. And one of the key issues in the area of food security have been inefficiencies in the entire agro-value chain, whereby, as we're speaking today, the continent is losing up to about $48 billion every year as a result of food harvest losses. But if renewable energy could be decentralized to rural areas where most of the agricultural actions happen, then this could give the opportunity to process what is produced there, and then linkages to market comes in where the produce could actually be sold. So the menu of solutions is there, but the inclusive partnership to ensure that the different actors can be brought on board is actually what the ecosystem-based adaptation for food security is doing.
When all is said at the Conference of Parties, a lot has to be done for the continent to be food secure.
How, under the changing climate, can we utilize ecosystem-based approaches, which the continent is already using, to be able to enhance agricultural production and adapt to climate change? At the same time, also expanding the entire agro-value chain so that what is produced on farm also find its way into the market, and the policy barriers that have been existing could be addressed. But the conference came out with an outcome which was, a conference is just a conference,
yes,
but to be able to have a framework which is decentralized to countries and engage everyone, that is the only way that action could actually take place.
The agricultural sector is the mainstay of Kenya's economy. The sector directly contributes 24% of the gross domestic product and is the largest employer in the economy, accounting for 60% of the total employment. This means that for the country to grow, maybe the best strategy would be to borrow a leaf from other countries in order to get it right.
In Nigeria, there is what they call the risk-sharing facility, which the central bank have actually developed, and UN Environment Program is working through the EBAFOSA framework to ensure that ecosystem-based adaptation can actually be integrated, because it's a risk averter, and the farmers who are practicing these approaches could actually be given the opportunity to assess loans at a low interest rate.
Large parts of Australia are periodically under drought, but yet we run large-scale agricultural farms, so that's one area. The application of technology to farming, I think our expertise is relevant to Kenya.
The changing climate already, which has been manifested, whether in the drought in the Sahel in 2012 or the drought in the Horn of Africa in 2011 that affected millions of people, shows that agricultural production and a sector which employs 65% of the entire labor force is the most affected already, and is going to be accelerated or escalated under the already changing climate. So as we speak today, Africa is a continent that is vulnerable because of the sector in which so many people depend on, and also because of the less capacity as compared to developed countries that it has today.
That marks the end of our show, but remember, we can always engage online using the hashtag food security and climate change. My name is Elijah Mwangi, and I've been sitting in for Alex Chamwada, who is actually in Liberia, and perhaps he can tell us what to expect in the next episode.
Actually, Elijah, next week we will stay on this subject of agriculture and food security. We will be looking into whether mega projects like the Galana Kulalu food security project are on track towards making Kenyans food secure. Later on, we will go into the education sector. We will compare Kenya's sector and that of Liberia, which was affected by many years of civil war and later on Ebola. So that's part of what brought me here in Monrovia, Elijah.
Well, Alex, I do hope that you're enjoying yourself there in Liberia, and I wish you the very best in your assignments. On behalf of the entire crew, a big thank you to our viewers for watching the show, and bye-bye for now.